Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl. We're back again with some more above-the-line Oscar predictions. And since our last video, Matt and myself have both watched some brand new films. So I've seen Gladiator 2. I can talk about it, and you'll kind of see that reflected in my acting predictions that we have today.
On the other hand, I've seen Nickel Boys, I've seen Blitz, I've now seen September 5, I've now seen A Real Pain. I can talk about all of those, and people might not like my opinions on some of them. Unfortunately, the one that I loved the most of that bunch was Nickel Boys, and because today's an acting video, I don't get to talk about that one at all, really. There's no acting contender in that movie. Some would say Ingenue Ellis-Taylor. I would say probably not. She's not on screen that much. The internal camera, as Ramel Ross described it, it means that since we're seeing through POV the whole time, a lot of the performances are just happening in our ears. And even when we are seeing them on screen, because our eyes are wandering, the camera's eyes are moving around, a lot of the time we're not actually seeing their face. So it's a very interesting film, and definitely not the acting contender that I know I thought it could be early on in the year.
I'm glad that you like Nickel Boys. I saw it about a month and a half ago, so I'm glad we can finally talk about it, but that will be for our next episode where we do director and we'll do screenplay. So if you're new here, consider dropping subscriptions so you can stay up to date. And like Matt said, you don't always have to agree with our opinions. We love to hear the feedback down below. So if you get mad about something that we say, or you like one of our argument points today, let us know. But let's not waste any time. Let's dive into the best actor, because here's a point I know people won't like. I don't have the consensus frontrunner as my number one, but Matt, you do, and when you average our ratings together, Adrien Brody is our number one and best actor.
Yes, Adrien Brody is my frontrunner. You've got him at number two. It's pretty easy at this point in the race, looking at a film as big as The Brutalist, something that's going to get as many nominations, as much love from critics, as much, hopefully, support from the industry. It's easy to put him at number one. It just feels like the safe choice at this point. From everything we know, he has the flashiest performance in the biggest movie, and that is a pretty good way to get to that Oscar. Plus, he has a great narrative of having basically disappeared for 20 years. He's been working, but the quality of stuff that Adrien Brody's been doing has certainly been a low point for Oscar winners post-winning an award. For him to be back in a role like this, there is a narrative around celebrating him. Something I'm going to keep my eye on through the season is just how is The Brutalist performing at these awards bodies. If this is a film that is continually picking up director, if it's continually getting all of the nominations that it needs, if it's winning those tech awards like cinematography, score, production design, then Adrien Brody is far and away out front. But if it starts to falter at all, if it starts to miss some of those key nominations, if it starts to show that there is a lack of passion, then Adrien Brody starts to be in trouble, and I would start looking to other contenders instead of him. But at this point, it feels like he's so far out front because people just really love this movie right now.
Let me be up front. I'm probably one of the biggest Adrien Brody heads in this whole community that we have. I should be leaping at this opportunity to award him with a second Best Actor prize. Just my thing is what I said in our Best Picture episode. I see The Brutalist doing exactly what you just said, stumbling the further that we go into award season. That can be for a multitude of reasons. While it does seem very strong, I really like the movie myself. I feel like it's going to struggle maintaining this passion throughout the entirety of awards season. I think it's that age-old film that we have every year that seems like a shoo-in to win so many awards. It just peaks too early, and other films kind of come in and steal that buzz. You mentioned a few categories there, like production design. Seemingly like we have a new production design frontrunner. Score. The score here is great. It's one theme though, and the rest of the score is present, but it hangs around more in the background. We've seen scores win before with just one element, and I think that goes over to acting as well. Will Brody be the sole winner at the end of the day? He could be, or he could not. I just see Brody being one of those people who kind of peaks a little too early on in the season, and once we get down to more of the industry awards, once we get to the Oscars, someone just has more buzz behind him to lead to that Oscar glory.
I can see a lot of that, but at the same time, I'm still much higher on The Brutalist's hopes than you are, especially on a technical level. I don't see this being a one Oscar movie. I see this winning 4, 5 maybe. Even when people start saying that they respect it more than they love it, it's going to still pick up some of those wins because it's the individual tech elements that I think people will really respect of this. And it's the performance that I think people will really love. Brody is the typical flashy, he's yelling, he gets to really do a physical performance in a way that oftentimes we see these Best Actor winners having. He has all the marks of what that is. I think what it's going to come down to is, at the end of the season, is his film the strongest to get him that prize?
And that's something that we'll have to see the further we get into the season. My pick currently to win lead actor, and it's something I've had for a few months now, and I would feel kind of dumb to jump off of him now, right before a lot of people will have the opportunity to see this film, is Timothee Chalamet in A Complete Unknown. I know I will hear the complaints. A musical biopic acting performance hasn't won in ages in the lead acting category. They always seem strong going up to the end. They usually win either BAFTA or SAG, sometimes maybe even Golden Globe, but then they fall at the Oscars, and hey, maybe that could be Chalamet again this year. But going back to kind of what my reasoning has been him for the majority of the season is he is young, but he has been around for a while. He's been in a lot of Best Picture or films in the Best Picture conversation, and sure, you can say he's still too young, this may not be the film for it, but the early buzz from some people who have seen the film, from what I've heard, is that he is the highlight of this movie, very akin to Austin Butler and Elvis. Obviously, Butler did not go on to win. He lost to Brendan Fraser, who was just the bigger performance overall, the more showier performance overall. Kind of similar here with the matchup that we have of Brody and Chalamet. I would just be very interested to see, once people are allowed to publicly speak about Chalamet's performance, what the reactions will be there, how this film performs at the box office, and then just what the precursor path at the televised awards look like. Because I'm not expecting Chalamet to win many of any critics groups. I'm expecting Brody to pretty much clean up across the board there. It's when we get to Critics' Choice. It's when we get to BAFTA. It's when we get to Golden Globe. It's when we get to SAG. Is Chalamet taking all 4? Is Brody taking all 4? Are they splitting 2 and 2? Or is our number 3 kind of sticking his head up and saying, like, no, I'm still here. Give me a prize because I'm great in my movie as well.
I just keep coming back to seeing Chalamet your number 1. If you think that he's winning, I think that you really need to have A Complete Unknown doing much better than you have it doing right now. Last week, we saw your picture package for A Complete Unknown is just picture, actor, makeup. I do believe that if you have a biopic actor winning, you need to have some strength for the movie. The Whale is the only time recently that we've seen a film underperform at nominations and still win Best Actor. And it also won Best Makeup at the same time. So if you have a path where A Complete Unknown has just 3 or 4 nominations and it's only winning Timothée Chalamet, that doesn't feel like a proper or a correct win package for a movie like this. I feel like A Complete Unknown is going to be the type of mid-biopic that we see every year that gets nominations despite the fact that it's pretty unanimously agreed. It's just fine. And Timothée Chalamet, to me, doesn't read as a winner, at least this year. I think his performance this year will boost him to a potential win next year in Josh Safdie's movie, Marty Supreme. This just feels like another step on the ladder of Timothée Chalamet having earned an Oscar. A lot of your argument hinges on he's been in the industry for long enough. People are going to want to award him. Almost an overdue narrative for an actor he's like 30 right now. You can't be overdue at 30. You really can't.
That is true. You can't be overdue at 30. It's just something that I've felt. Are they really going to do Chalamet the DiCaprio route and say, like, oh, we're going to deny you all these times when you could be worthy of it younger in your career, and then we're giving it to you so much later? Obviously, that's probably a backwards way of thinking about it. I think it's something that will play into the season, and then it goes into my whole argument of Searchlight clearly believes that this film and that Chalamet is real, else they probably would not have rushed it and are doing such a massive promo campaign for it. I mean, they're screening the film to critics nationwide nearly a whole month prior to release. The embargo is 2.5, 3 weeks before the film comes out. They're expecting the buzz to be positive. It's just, does this film end up being as positive as Searchlight is hoping and Searchlight is believing for it to be?
I don't think DiCaprio is the right comparison for Chalamet. I think it's Joaquin Phoenix. He got his first nomination when he was a very, very young man, in Gladiator. 5 years later, he was in Walk the Line, playing Johnny Cash. Did he win for that role? No, he lost. He had strong work constantly over and over and over, and it took him 2 decades to get his Joker moment. Timothee Chalamet, again, I don't think that it's going to take him that long, but he's not DiCaprio. DiCaprio had many nominations by this point in his career. Chalamet still just has the one for Call Me By Your Name. He has not built up that portfolio of every single time he does something, he gets nominated. So far, he's been snubbed more times than he's been nominated. Remember all the talk around Beautiful Boy? Didn't happen. And so right now, I don't see him in that position of like, let's award him now so he doesn't become overdue later. That's not him. He has not proven himself to be DiCaprio at this point. He should be solid for a nomination. I would not put him in win contention, though.
I guess we'll have to see here in about 2.5, 3 weeks' time. But speaking of someone who has had a long career, who probably hasn't had the acclaim and praise that they deserve, Ralph Fiennes, Conclave. He's someone who, throughout the year, people have said maybe he can win. We both saw the film and said, no, but a nomination is all but assured. If Conclave has a resurgence down the line with maybe the post-election results, this film now being most people's #1 in adapted screenplay, maybe he can poke his head up. I see a lot of people say BAFTA. Sure, I get it. I think he makes more sense for something like a Golden Globe, more so than a BAFTA in terms of the possible win where he pops up. But I think he's very firmly into this conversation, and I think 2-3 is a very worthy place to have him.
What Ralph Fiennes requires at this point is for The Brutalist to become a much weaker film than it is at the moment. Ralph Fiennes' performance in Conclave reminds me a lot of Cillian Murphy last year, where it's a performance that doesn't have any big, loud moments. It's something that is much more subdued. Not just Cillian Murphy, I also think back to Colin Farrell in The Banshees of Inisherin. It's a subdued performance that is really, really strong work, but what it's going to require to get a win is for the film to be the strongest in the conversation. So if we see The Brutalist falter, if we don't see a comeback from Sing Sing, if A Complete Unknown is not the big movie that I know you're really expecting it to be, I'm kind of expecting it to be, then Ralph Fiennes has a path just by being in the movie that people like the most. Unless Conclave can become that, unless it is the film that people just adore above everything else in the category, then it's too small of a performance and it's too subdued of a role to get a prize. But that said, everything that we've talked about in terms of overdue narratives, Ralph Fiennes is right there as an actor who has been steadily working for decades now. He's been Voldemort, and he's also been in Schindler's List. He's had The English Patient, and he's had The Grand Budapest Hotel. He's had sort of this success across all different parts of the industry, and he has still never won an Academy Award. We could see that narrative really form behind him, especially if none of the other contenders have the passion that we expect them to.
Next up, we have someone who kind of just seems to have the unluckiest hand dealt to him every year. You go back to last year, he gets nominated for Rustin, and just a film people didn't really care much about, but a performance that when people saw the film, were like, maybe in another year it could be in win contention. Now he moves to this year where it looks like he's going to be very solidly number 5 in the category. This time his film may be more liked, more beloved. The performance just isn't as showy as the one from the year prior. Very good performance, just a performance that probably isn't going to win much of anywhere. But I think it'll be interesting to see for Domingo next year. He's in Michael. Year number 3 straight of nominations, or will the streak end there?
It's very interesting that he's coming right after Ralph Fiennes here, because I think they have very similar reasons for why they could win and why they won't win, which is, like you said, very subdued performance, but they could win if the film just ends up having the most passion. That's entirely what Sing Sing is relying on at this point, is if we get to the end of the year and it's getting that passionate response, if people are loving this film, if this is the movie that's in every single person's heart, then Colman Domingo makes a lot of sense to come along as a winner. But at this moment, we have no reason to believe that Sing Sing will have that, because on its release, it flopped so hard. Now, that said, we both think Clarence Maclin's winning. And if Clarence Maclin is winning, could that help Colman Domingo?
I think one of the most compelling things for Sing Sing going forward, and I want to give a shout out to Ezra, who's in our Discord community. He went to a screening the other day. He talked to some of the cast, and the cast told him that A24 is planning a much bigger release when we get into late December, early January. How big is that going to be? We can only guess. A24 said wide the first time around, and we saw how wide it actually went. So I think the biggest thing for Sing Sing right now, and I think you make a great point with Clarence Maclin, is we kind of have to look at it at whole. If Sing Sing is going to potentially win an above-the-line supporting actor prize, it probably is stronger in adapted screenplay than what we talked about last time, and probably stronger in picture than kind of where we were feeling last time. And I mean, that also carries over to Colman Domingo. If Sing Sing is winning something, he is at least firmly in for the nomination, and who knows, maybe he could pick up some Critics Guild somewhere. I just think above the line, the three people ahead of him all have a chance to win somewhere at one of those major prizes, while Domingo probably isn't winning any of the big five.
Probably not any of the big five, but he could pick up those regional awards. And what we were saying earlier, Adrien Brody should be sweeping those. If we start to see Adrien Brody losing those to Ralph Fiennes, to Colman Domingo, then that could be a sign that Adrien Brody doesn't have the passion that we were expecting. But at this point, I think these are the consensus top four, I would say. Pretty much everyone is going to have these four in some order. Number 5 is where it gets really tricky, because this year, Best Actor is one of the weakest categories, probably the weakest that we've seen. It's hard to say that when a couple of years ago we had the debate of, could Tom Cruise be in, or is it Paul Mescal? So at least the weakest since that year.
That year, I think, still had some pretty good performances in it. But I think this year is probably more top-heavy, because I like the 4 performances, if not love the 4 performances, because I haven't seen one of them, that we have above. But yeah, the big question here for the 5th spot is, who has the passion? Because you can see the names here next to us. You have a mix of people who are getting acclaim for their performance, but their film is weak. You have a mix of films being big, but performances are being called miscast or not as good. And then you have performances that films aren't really on the Academy's radar whatsoever. So, like, I know we are both in the Sebastian stand for The Apprentice camp. I know that we are also 2 of the only people who are in Sebastian stand for The Apprentice camp. And I think we'll either look really smart here in about a month's time when we get to some of these TV awards like Golden Globes, or we'll look really dumb because he won't even make a lineup of 6.
And that's totally possible. But right now, Sebastian Stan feels like a nomination that could happen, especially because what we have kept saying all year long, literally since March, has been The Apprentice is going to most appeal to the actors branch. How many of those actors are like Robert De Niro and have spent most of their year, most of the past 8 years, talking about how terrible Trump is? The actors branch is the one that's going to come out for this movie the most. And when we look at the rest of the competition, when we look at John David Washington in The Piano Lesson below, when we look at Paul Mescal in Gladiator 2, who's being called terribly miscast, when we look at Kingsley Ben-Adir, who is in Bob Marley, a film that came and went and nobody cared about. Like, the only reason we're even humoring him is because this is such a thin lineup, and then people are tossing out Jesse Eisenberg in A Real Pain. But if you've seen that movie, Jesse Eisenberg is not the one that people are going to talk about in it. And so it just brings me back to Sebastian Stan, a performance that people are talking about. Even people that don't like the movie are saying Sebastian Stan is incredible. It just feels like the only thing that could take this spot at the moment.
It's not the importance of The Apprentice or people's political feelings on the movie or the lead subject itself. It's Sebastian Stan's performance, which has been getting raised from people who have watched it. They've been going out for Jeremy Strong as well. But the element that I think raises Sebastian Stan over Strong is it's more of a showcase here, showing multiple sides of this character who's also caked in makeup, and you can see the physical transformation on this performance. And then, like you said, rolling through the other ones, John David Washington, people say he's good, but people don't really care about The Piano Lesson whatsoever. It's in limited release now. It comes out on Netflix in like a week. We'll see if the reactions kind of change, but it doesn't seem many people want to go out of their way for him. Then Paul Mescal, I like Gladiator 2. I really liked him inside this movie. I understand understand why people don't like him, but also his performance isn't the thing to get nominated. Even if this film is in Best Picture, I don't see why Mescal would be our fifth and lead actor. That sure, there's Glenn Powell and Hitman, he could win the Globe, that boost him up into the conversation. Kingsley Benadir. I mean, I'll fight back a little bit. The movie made about $100 million domestically. People went out to see it, but people didn't really like the movie whatsoever. So I think it's just very telling, like you said, that he is now up into what most people have in their top 10. I've seen people go as high to put him at number 5. Insiders know Paramount's trying to make him happen, but we hear this every year. Studios who try to make this one thing happen, and when it's in a film that just has nothing else for it, how often does that really happen?
I'm wondering more and more about Glenn Powell, actually. He's had such a buzzy year. Everyone's been talking about Glenn Powell. He's the sexiest man alive.
He did not win.
He didn't win? Who won?
They picked John Krasinski.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. I thought he won. Maybe that's the reason Glenn Powell doesn't get a nomination. It's the precursor that we all talk about for Best Actor every year. Anyways, though, I do wonder if Glenn Powell could make a run for that spot because of how weak this category is. He's likely winning the Golden Globe, which could boost him up in the conversation a little bit. But overall, this category is just a mess. Outside of that top 4, what do you do?
And you know what I would really like to see happen, but I know for a fact will not happen whatsoever, is that we have a Judas and the Black Messiah situation just in the reverse. Culkin, move him to lead, free nomination, clears up supporting actor for other people, but I know we're in too deep. Searchlight can't switch it now. They've already started campaigning him and supporting, but I feel like if they did that, the roads would be easier for all involved.
Anyways, there's something that I've really liked seeing, a trend that it used to be every year that the Best Actor prize was stacked, and it was full of all of the films that were vying for the biggest awards. And then Best Actress was just the leftovers. But now it's really switched, and every year it feels like Best Actress is incredibly competitive for the nomination, where the field is just so deep, and they're from films that are really doing well in the Best Picture race. For years and years and years, it was basically a given that your winner for Best Actor would be from a Best Picture nominee, and your winner from Best Actress would usually be from some random film out there. And I feel like it's kind of switched. Things are changing, and I like to see it. And that's why I think both of us have Mikey Madison at number 1. The film is incredibly strong. It is a Best Picture frontrunner. And alongside that Best Picture frontrunner, Mikey Madison makes a lot of sense to award with that movie.
You have to look at the competition of the year that you're in, because you can go back to past years and make comparisons. Like, would Mikey Madison win in the last 2 or 3 seasons? Probably not. But here this year, there's not, at least at this moment, a very strong number 2, where like Emma Stone had Lily Gladstone, or Michelle Yeoh had Cate Blanchett, 2 of which who probably would have won if they were in this year, because their films were both strong and very showy. Madison, the main reason why all season long I was like, I don't know if I can put her number 1, even though I did believe in Honora's strength in picture, was just the performance didn't seem like the typical winner on paper. After seeing the film the first time, I held the same metric, but I understood why. After seeing the film a second time, I now kind of agree, but I still had that sneaking reservation in the back of my head that this is a performance that doesn't feel like a Best Actress winner, and at least the buzz around me seemed to agree, but also feel like she's phenomenal. And I feel like the biggest issue here, as we go through the rest of the list, we have good performances. We don't have any other great performances in films that are top of the line Best Picture contenders. And Mikey Madison, she checks off both boxes.
I would disagree with you saying that she would lose against someone like Lily Gladstone, or she would lose against someone like Cate Blanchett. She would definitely lose against Michelle Yeoh. I don't know if she would lose against Emma Stone, because I think what we're seeing a lot of in the Best Actress race is that it correlates a lot between who has the biggest movie, who is in the film that the most people are loving and they're loving the main character in. A lot of the reason why this is a Best Picture frontrunner is because of Mikey Madison. You put her up against any of these past winners and you have to think, would Anora be higher up in Best Picture than Poor Things, for example? Would Anora be higher up than Everything Ever All at Once? No, it wouldn't. But some of these past years, you do kind of have to draw that link. And so if Anora were up against Cate Blanchett, I think the same stuff would happen, where people just love Anora more than they loved Tar. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about this year. I kind of disagree with you that there is no number 2 at this point, because I believe that Karla Sofía Gascón in Emilia Perez, she has a film that could end up being an upset to Anora. And if Emilia Perez is to upset Anora, if it is to come in and take down what we see as the Best Picture frontrunner, then I would say we would also be seeing Karla Sofía Gascón taking down Mikey Madison. Whatever wins Best Picture wins Best Actress. So right now, I'm saying it's Mikey Madison, but I think Karla Sofía Gascón is right behind.
I guess my main reason for being a little bit lower than Gascón, you watch Emilia Perez, you talk to people at Emilia Perez, their first reaction is always Saldaña. Sometimes their second reaction is Selena Gomez. So sometimes Gascón is the third person you're talking about when talking about acting inside the film. I'm currently thinking this is the way that Globes could play out. I think Emilia Perez could win Best Picture Musical Comedy at Globe, but Madison would still win Comedy Actress. But I still think that Anora is the much stronger film at basically every other awards body. I think Globes will just do their own thing, as they've shown the last few years inside these categories.
You do bring up a good point that a similarity we can draw here is to last year, where you have the undeniable lead who's on screen for like 95% of the film being Emma Stone and Mikey Madison, versus the questionable lead, the one who the film is definitely about them, but they're not on screen as much. They kind of fade into the background sometimes, being Lily Gladstone and Karla Sofía Gascón. So maybe that is a reason why Mikey Madison will just clean up. But at the same time, I feel like Karla Sofía Gascón, there is this historical element, which again, we saw last year boosting Lily Gladstone quite a bit. Obviously, couldn't boost Lily Gladstone to a win, but it was pretty tight at the end of the day.
To move to our number 3 in the category, you talked about the beginning of this segment of Best Actress, of how the state of the race has really changed pre-COVID. Our winners in this category would oftentimes be kind of the more generic type winners whose films aren't very strong across the board, but as a showcase acting performance. And that is what, at least seemingly on paper, Angelina Jolie and Maria is. From what I've heard from people who have seen it, who are general audience members, is that she's good, the movie's whatever, and that sentiment also seems to carry over to critics and to people inside the industry. And I feel like that's going to be her biggest drawback as we get into award season. I could still see her upsetting Madsen or upsetting Gascón at some bodies. I mean, she kind of has Golden Globe drama laid out for her. Will she win it? That's a question all upon itself. But I could see her contending at SAG, or I could see her contending at BAFTA. But I still think at the end of the day, she is a firm 2 or 3 inside this category.
I would agree with you that she is a firm nominee, but people don't care about the movie. And I do believe that we've shifted to a point where you have to care about the movie to win Best Actress. Counterpoint for that, I guess, is Jessica Chastain won pretty recently for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, a movie that nobody cared about.
Yeah, but the alternative there would be who would be in a movie that people care about.
But that's exactly it. That was a field of Best Actress nominees where really none of them were fitting into that. That was a year that was very atypical in terms of that. And I think this is a year where we do have 2 very big Best Picture contenders competing in this category. So to me, Angelina Jolie is a nominee who should just be happy to be there.
And then number 4, in terms of her average rating, is another nominee who I think should just be happy to be there, because to me, after seeing Room Next Door, I found Julianne Moore to be the much better between the two of her and Tilda Swinton, but Swinton's the one who's getting the push. The deciding factor here is, do you have Room Next Door in picture? If you do, put her in your 5. If you don't have Room Next Door in picture, take her out, put in someone else. I think that's really the end of the conversation with Swinton. She's not winning anywhere. She's not a firm in the 5 or in the 6 at every awards body. But if the film is performing strong there, more European-centric awards bodies, then we're in there. We've seen EFA really like the film, and I think that's only going to continue at Globes, at BAFTA. But I think at SAG and at Critics' Choice, maybe she doesn't come along.
They should have put Tilda Swinton in supporting, and
I agree.
She would have been a surefire nomination there. I would disagree with you, Dylan. I preferred Tilda Swinton to Julianne Moore. I think Tilda Swinton is fantastic, but she is a supporting performance. and she should be in supporting, and it's going to do a disservice to her potential. I do think she gets nominated, but I think it is a real tight thing that she just may not show up. Like you said, she's going to struggle with some of those bodies like the Critics' Choice, like SAG. She's likely to get into the Golden Globes. But again, Pedro Almodovar, he has a track record of getting nominations for his actors, at least recently. And even if the film's not in Best Picture, I do still think that Tilda Swinton can make it in because actors clearly resonate with the performances in his movies.
This is where our actress categories kind of split, and I actually want to hand it over to you because I have Cynthia Erivo as my number 5. Maybe I am being wicked pilled. I haven't seen the film. You have. So what are your thoughts on Cynthia Erivo?
Cynthia Erivo is very good. However, in the first act of Wicked, we are presented with this character of Elphaba, who is the Wicked Witch of the West, but she seems not so wicked whatsoever. She's a little bit quieter. She's a sweet kid who doesn't really like to speak out, doesn't like to be loud, doesn't like to draw attention to herself. Meanwhile, you have Ariana Grande's Glinda, who's just running around in circles like a maniac. Like, she's just ridiculous, over the top. And so the thing with Cynthia Erivo is that her vocals may be beautiful, but her character isn't doing that much within the movie, which is very interesting. She is the protagonist, but her character doesn't have a ton of agency. She doesn't have a ton to do. And so it's a smaller performance with great vocals, and that doesn't feel to me like something that they need to award. If anything, I would see Grande get a nomination for this one, Cynthia Erivo miss, and then next year it would flip with Cynthia Erivo really having more to do in the second act and Ariana Grande having much less to do in the second act.
And you know what? I think you make a lot of great points there, because the main thing that really connected with me with what you just said was the sense of agency. And while she is the lead and her vocals may be amazing, she doesn't have much to do. And that reminds me back to West Side Story a few years ago with Rachel Zegler, who,
bingo,
for all reasons on paper, should have been a for surefire nomination, and maybe she was just too young, or maybe she was just too new, missed on the nomination. And from seeing Wicked the play, I fully get what you're saying about the character and stuff to do. It's just my issue is I don't really know who to put in, but I see that you have Marianne Jean-Baptiste, so let's hear your reason why.
Well, let's just briefly touch on who else do we put in. There's so many performances that could contend. We were looking at lead actor and saying, who the hell else could be in? And I think the answer in lead actress is like, there's 5, 6 other people that could make it in. This is a stacked lineup. It is a deep lineup. I'm currently going with Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths. This has been doing extremely well on Metacritic. People love this. And when I think about who is going to win trifectas, I think Mikey Madison and I think Marianne Jean-Baptiste. She is going to pick up 2 out of the 3 trifecta awards, maybe all 3. I don't know whether Hard Truths is going drama or comedy at the Golden Globes, but either way, it's getting a nomination for Marianne Jean-Baptiste. It's getting in BAFTA. The same way Tilda Swinton is a surefire Golden Globe and BAFTA nominee, Marianne Jean-Baptiste is as well. People like Hard Truths more than The Room Next Door, even though The Room Next Door will be a Best Picture contender and Hard Truths is not. That's a visibility thing. That said, of course, Hard Truths was rejected by Venice and The Room Next Door won the Golden Lion, so you can't really compare them in that way. Hard Truths to me feels like that under the radar gem that people watch after nominations and go, oh, that was really good. But it won't have the visibility to be seen before nominations. It's Bleecker Street.
At least during its initial festival rollout, as you mentioned, the Venice debacle, and then, at TIFF, the buzz was mixed overall, but as you said, the more places it plays at, the more people who see it, the more it's warming up, and I do agree. I think that she is in at Golden Globe. My understanding that is going drama, which is a much weaker category than comedy this year, especially in the actress field. And then, BAFTA she's in too. My biggest thing there is just, as we kind of just talked about, this Best Actress field is turning more into the picture players that feel stronger, what we're typical of seeing in Best Actor. And that's why I'm kind of confused of what to do with that 5th slot, if not Erivo, which I am going to switch after hearing your things here. It's just, who do I put? Because my mind instantly jumps to someone like Nicole Kidman, who did win the Volpe Cup at Venice, who has a great career narrative and is giving one of her best performances in like the last decade, if not more. It's just A24, they've clearly shown over the years, if you're not in their top 2, maybe top 3 films, they don't really care about you when it comes to campaigning. I'll be interested to see how that film plays when we get into stuff. Can it overcome, or will it be like Kaylee Spaney and Priscilla? It just shows up Globe because they get 6 nominees and nowhere else. And then like Saoirse Ronan for The Outrun, it makes sense, but no one cares about that movie. Awful viewership when it released theatrically, awful box office numbers coming in, and the film itself is pretty mixed, but people do agree that she's great. And then the last one I guess we have to mention is the one I know everyone in the comments like, put them in lead actress. They're going to get nominated. It's Demi Moore, but I don't see any chance for Demi Moore to get at the Oscars.
I agree with you, and we got so many comments on the Best Picture video where people were just taking us down for not believing in the substance. Again, I gotta reiterate, I love the substance. This is like...
Me too.
This is a top 5 movie of the year for me. I think it's fantastic. I do not see any world where the Academy goes out for a movie like this. It doesn't have the buzz outside of the film Twitter sphere. Critics don't love it. It has a sub 80 Metacritic score. I don't see the industry going out for it because it's weird and off-putting in a way that they never go out for. I think people are leading themselves to a Lupita Nyong'o and Us level disappointment, a Toni Collette and Hereditary level disappointment. This happens year after year where people pick a horror actress that is phenomenal, who is unfortunately in a horror movie, and genre bias is a very real thing that happens in the Academy. I don't see Demi Moore getting nominated no matter what happens. She is great in this movie, but at the same time, it's not the type of movie that gets into these awards. She'll get Golden Globe Comedy Actress, she'll pick up a good number of critic nominations, but when it comes to SAG, when it comes to BAFTA, I don't see her making it. I see a run that's Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, and regional critics.
I will add to the hate train of comments that will come in. This is the wrong horror actress to push this year, guys. Naomi Scott, Smile 2, we have her right here. And you know who else is going to poke their head up in the conversation in like a month's time? Lily Rose Depp and Nosferatu. But, you know, I get the Demi Moore support. I like The Substance overall. It's like my number 10, 11 movie of the year. It's just like the same thing Matt's saying. I see a hard path for it to succeed in award season, but that does not detract from the film's quality overall. If the Academy were going to go out of the box for this 5th slot nomination, it's someone like that Tease, like you talked about, and a film that's getting no other nominations, maybe a long shot for screenplay, or it's someone like Fernanda Torres and I'm Still Here, which is building buzz with the international bodies. We just have all these people here, like I said, with like Ronan and with other people in our category, and it's just, where will they go? I just don't think it will be Demi Moore.
I would agree with you. Fernanda Torres is totally possible here. People are loving I'm Still Here. It's currently got like the craziest curve on Letterboxd, which doesn't matter. But, you know, if we're looking for people supporting an international actress, that could be where we end up going.
We just talked about actress, and let's keep the actress conversation going. Just go to supporting actress this time. We have a pretty similar lineup for the most part with just some few things flipped around, and we both have Zoe Saldaña for Emilia Perez at our number 1. And I mean, it's the same conversation as we had every time we talked about this movie since Cannes. She's getting the most buzz out of this film. She has such a clear path. I know we have a new contender that we'll talk about here just in a little bit, but she has a clear path, and she has the screen time. She's singing, she's dancing, she's doing drama, she's doing comedy, all things that her number 2 is also doing. Her film also seems very strong in picture, and even though we both had the same reaction coming out of Emilia Perez of, she's great, doesn't feel like a winner, at least it's the exact same way I felt about Divine Joy Randolph last year in The Holdovers, and she went on to sweep the season. So I have no reason, at least at this moment, to believe that Saldaña won't also sweep the season.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I just still think she should be in the lead. That's a lead performance right there. She is the main character of the movie. She has the most screen time. That is a lead performance.
I'll be interested to see the screen time stats, because at least when I watched it, each have a half of the film that focuses more on them, where the other character is not as much in it. So I'll be interested to see whenever that official screen time rating comes out. Is Saldaña that much ahead, or are they a little bit more equal? But number 2, as I just said, does all the same things. Ariana Grande, Wicked. I haven't seen it though. It's the only one of my 10 I haven't seen. That has.
Dude, people were shocked on the last video that I said Ariana Grande is my favorite supporting performance of the year. People are shocked. And look, I am too. I am absolutely shook at how much I loved Ariana Grande in Wicked. The whole reason why I loved her performance so much is that it's a performance that's done with so much love. It's so earnest. You can just tell Ariana Grande has been rehearsing these lines for the last 20 years. She has clearly been a Wicked superfan ever since she was a kid. She was on Broadway in 13 the musical while Wicked was on. You can just feel that she has this deep love and adoration. And there's something so beautiful in seeing someone live out their dreams on screen. At the same time, this could end up giving us a Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born level campaign where people go, she wants this too much. People are already looking at her and Cynthia Erivo's press tour and being like, God, they're so annoying, which I disagree with. I think I watch every single one of those videos of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande on the press tour. Did you see the video where their interviewer reveals that she was in Avenue Q and they freak the fuck out?
I did, and I think just to talk about this subject at whole is you have two actresses who are very love it or hate it personalities, and I feel like the hate it camp are going to be so much more vocal than the love it camp, at least in this scenario in terms of this space. Most people in award space don't want to see these pop girlies come in and steal awards. They're resistant to it. They're resistant to these types of movies. Just look at people on Reddit and on Discord with the lead up of Wicked. They're saying pundits were paid off. These reviews are fake. This movie can't be that good. And guess what? At least seemingly, the movie is that good. And I think we're going to see it with Grande as we saw with Gaga in the past. And I'm sure we'll see with our next person all season long. Resist until it happens, and when it happens, they say it's fake.
People are going to decide before they see the movie that Ariana Grande couldn't be good, but she's really good. If people go in being open to being surprised by what Ariana can do, you'll be pretty happy with it. I'm not going to say that everyone else is going to think she's the best supporting performance of the year. I know that people are not going to agree with me on that, but on a personal level, I just found so much to love with her. That's not going to be the overwhelmingly popular opinion, though. There's, like you said, a lot of resistance, a lot of gatekeeping. People feel like these pop stars have enough recognition outside of Oscars. Why do we need to give them more love? And so they form that narrative in their own mind. And I do hope that what we see is that the industry is ready to take Ariana Grande seriously, because she clearly has her heart in this.
That leads us to Selena Gomez. Clearly the industry showed we don't take you seriously with the first season of Only Murders, even though they acclaimed that with awards the whole season long. But since then, the show's had 3 more seasons. She's been a consistent nominee with it, and I think that she's built up enough rapport inside the industry with her acting abilities. She's in a film that clearly is very strong in the race, and she's doing a lot inside of the film. I feel like she is a very firm nomination. Just obviously, she has someone else in her film who's very much stronger. We always talk about we need the double nomination. We need the double nomination. Obviously, some years it doesn't happen, but if it's going to happen this year, these two, this film, it's the most likely candidate for it.
Absolutely, it's the most likely candidate for a double nomination. It's so easy to put in Zoe Saldaña and Selena Gomez. I'm going to be really curious to see what the reaction to Selena Gomez's performance is since Emilia Perez is releasing right now, because I really liked her. I actually preferred Selena Gomez to Zoe Saldaña on my first watch, which is not a popular opinion. But I think Selena Gomez is a lot of fun here. She's chewing the scenery. She spends most of her screen time yelling and screaming, and I think that's just a lot of fun. But I've heard a lot of people having strong backlash against Selena Gomez, against her Spanish specifically. I've heard a lot of Spanish speakers who really don't feel like this role was right for her, that it was clear through her accent that she was just having difficulty with it. I can't speak to that because I am not a Spanish speaker, but a lot of people that I have spoken to that do speak Spanish have shared that opinion with me.
Nomination-wise, I think that she could be at every major precursor. She is one of those people, I think, for the rest of this list that we go in, who I feel most confident to show up across the board, which I know will be a sort of hot take as we dive into Felicity Jones and The Brutalist. But I feel like if The Brutalist is going to struggle anywhere, this is the first nomination to fall off. While the role is meaty, and she is trying, the film is actively trying to work against her and to give her those opportunities to really shine. Her biggest scene in the entire film, at least to me, plays in the most complete opposite tone in what's supposed to.
I completely disagree with you. Something you just mentioned with Selena Gomez is she's not going to miss a single one of the precursor nominations. I agree. She's going to get SAG, she's going to get Critics' Choice, she's going to get Golden Globe, and then she's going to get BAFTA. Felicity Jones, where does she miss? I don't think she misses anywhere else either.
I would say the most likely one would be SAG, because you could pluck in a big name actress, maybe named Saoirse Ronan, and you can plug in a historical actress that has received a lot of love throughout their career, just hasn't had the opportunity for that moment to shine, like Isabella Rossellini.
I disagree with you on that. I think The Brutalist is strong enough that this feels to me like early on in the year last year when we were making every excuse we could to write Emily Blunt out of a nomination.
When we go into these acting categories, we oftentimes resort to the picture nominees, and we get proven each year, as we see with the Naiad Hive last year, we see with Rustin, and we'll see with films this year. Non-Best Picture nominees sneak their way into these categories because we never have a perfect 2020 split. Danielle Deadwyler, who we'll talk about here shortly for Piano Lesson, she could be the massive snub again, but I feel like Netflix, at least behind the campaign this time, will make sure that probably doesn't happen. I thought Saoirse Ronan Blitz was pretty bad, but other people seem to like her, and I feel like she is someone who, with the narrative of the two performances she had this year, can sneak her into this weaker category compared to the stronger one of lead.
Saoirse Ronan, let's just quickly talk about her there. She's fine. I don't think she's bad in the movie. I will quote my fiance, who is a huge Saoirse Ronan fan, has loved every single thing that she's done. What she said to me after Blitz was, Saoirse Ronan didn't do anything in that movie. I would say if Blitz gets into Best Picture, Saoirse Ronan is a contender for a nomination. If Blitz is out, Saoirse Ronan is gone. No chance that Saoirse Ronan gets in without the movie. But there's a chance that the movie gets in without Saoirse Ronan.
I personally would like to flop her with Felicity Jones, and maybe I will later on down the line. Ronan's built up enough buzz. She's built up enough credibility in the industry where this can be a slot for a non-Best Picture nominee acting performance. But like I said before, I did not really like the performance that much. I don't feel like she does much, and I don't know how much of it is her fault, more so than the screenwriting and the way that the performance was captured, not really giving her either moments to shine or allowing her character to do much whatsoever.
If we keep calling Blitz a Nightmare Alley parallel, where it could sneak in based on a weaker top 10 with a couple of tech nominations, then Saoirse Ronan is Cate Blanchett.
The thing is, I've never really thought the Nightmare Alley comparisons. I agree they could be true. I think Nightmare Alley works much more for a film like Nosferatu, or maybe even a film like The Substance.
No, I disagree, because the thing with Nightmare Alley is the strength of that film was entirely based on it's Guillermo del Toro's new movie. And the strength of Blitz is almost entirely on it's Steve McQueen's new movie. Both are a former Best Picture winner. Both films are getting mediocre critical reception. Not mediocre, they're actually very good. Blitz has a low 70s Metacritic score. I believe it was the same for Nightmare Alley back in 2021, where it was a low 70s Metacritic score. Both could be boosted by the industry just coming together around a few tech nominations and people really liking the director. So this could just be a Steve McQueen prize. And both movies had some talk around the supporting actress in it, Cate Blanchett, and Saoirse Ronan. At the end of the day, they're just not doing enough in the movie.
I guess the part of the Nightmare Alley comparisons I don't necessarily agree with is the tech support, because I don't think Blitz will get much tech support. It maxes at 2 tech noms.
And Nightmare Alley didn't have a ton either. It had cinematography, it had production design, and maybe costume design. And Blitz, to me, has a song potential, it has a potential for costumes, a potential for production design, and it has a potential for sound. Sound is the strongest of anything there because it is loud and they emphasize every single sound effect. Danielle Deadwyler, controversially, I have dropped her out of my top 5, mostly because I just don't see people caring about the piano lesson, but I felt the same about Naiad, and Netflix proved me wrong. So I could be proven wrong, and we could see Danielle Deadwyler and John David Washington make it in to their respective categories just because Netflix is so damn good.
I know most voters probably don't think like this, but it is in the back of their mind, and I think Netflix will make it a part of the campaign. Guys, y'all missed her last time. You're really going to miss her again this year. And I feel like Danielle Deadwyler is the focal point of the whole piano lesson campaign. If this film gets any nomination, it's her. I guess we'll have to see how the film performs here in the coming weeks, because like I said, opens up in limited, I guess, this past week, Netflix, and this next week. So maybe it gets more buzzy, but I mean, Naya never really got to be very buzzy until it got nominations. And I guess the last person to really talk to, because if you can see my list, you see I make a statement at number 8. Gaga's there to make a statement. No one from her afterwards has any sort of chance, and she's just there to say, that's what I think. Rossellini, though, she's my 7 because she has a small chance. Don't think it's happening. I think the 6 above her all have much stronger narratives. The main thing for Rossellini is if Conclave is for real, if it has a chance to potentially be a Best Picture winner, she can come along. If the film goes back to what we all were feeling about 2-3 weeks ago before the film's release, then I don't think she has a chance. Her role isn't big enough. She has one ultimate mic drop scene, but outside of that, there's nothing for her to do, and we have seen performances get in for just one scene in the past, but usually those performances are in win contention.
I would say if we see a Rossellini nomination, that's a really good sign for Ralph Fiennes' chances, because it shows that the actors love this movie. But with Isabella Rossellini, the whole argument I have around why she might get a nomination here is that she is someone who could be seen as deeply overdue. She's a legendary performer who's been working consistently since the early 1980s. She is the daughter of Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini. She is Hollywood royalty, and she has never received an Oscar nomination. Does the Academy really want to, and specifically does the actors branch of the Academy really want to let a performer like this go without ever giving her a single nomination? And they might not think like that, but at the same time, there's a chance here to nominate Isabella Rossellini. She has, like you said, the ultimate mic drop moment in her movie.
With all those points there, it will be one of those things, while you're getting ahead of the curve, I will wait for the curve to come to me for me to raise her up into my top 5. I have Ingenue Ellis-Taylor at my number 9 for Nickel Boys. Love this movie. She's great in it, but as Matt said before, you leave Nickel Boys, she is not in the first 5 to 10 thoughts you have on the film. And then at 10, I just have Margaret Qualley, Substance. Substance heads, y'all hate us. We see the comments. Here you go. I'll put her in my 10 for y'all.
I'm curious what you think about A Complete Unknown. With there's 2 contenders for A Complete Unknown right now, Monica Barbaro and Elle Fanning. I notice you don't have either of them in your top 10, but you are pretty strong on the movie. There's a lot of positive hype around Monica Barbaro specifically. So what is your reasoning here for not having either of them anywhere near?
I'll be very interested to see what they do inside the film, but just based off of, I know Walk the Line is an exception, but based off of almost all of these musical biopics that have come out in the last decade, when has anyone else besides the main focus had more than a scene or 2 to really do much? We'll talk more about it with Edward Norton and the next category, but at least for me, I'm going to hold off on them until I hear something about them from someone who's seen the film. So far, all we've heard is Timmy and Norton.
And moving on to the last category, supporting actor, we both have Clarence Maclin winning. Admittedly, I don't see who else could win because of the strength of the performance, the weakness of the category, and the narrative around the fact that he is playing a version of himself. He is bringing his true story to the screen. At the same time, neither of us believes that Sing Sing has a lot of momentum around it. And if we're both skeptical about Sing Sing's odds in general, it feels a little bit weird that we are this undeniably behind Clarence Maclin.
Personally, last video, I may have moved Sing Sing a little too far down after moving it off of adapted screenplay because of what you just said there. If I had Maclin winning, this film probably isn't number 7 in the Best Picture race. Maybe even number 5 if it's winning a major above-the-line award. And I think going back to your point of who else can win, I think a lot of people will say the person who we have at number 7 can be a win contender. You've seen the film, I haven't, but we both stick to what we said all season long, which we'll talk about when we get to him. Just seeing the majority of these other major contenders, they're good. They don't have the winning juice in the way that Clarence Maclin does. And I think the only detraction to Clarence Maclin right now can be, will people see Sing Sing? But I think if Sing Sing gets nominated for Best Picture, people will watch it. It's under 2 hours. It will probably be the shortest or second shortest Best Picture nominee that we have this year. Voters out there, if he gets the nomination, will probably see his film, and it'll probably be one of the easier ones for them to watch.
The only other person that I really see as a win contender here is Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2. Now, I haven't seen Gladiator 2, so you could correct me if I'm wrong on this. I mean, we've compared Gladiator 2 to Black Panther Wakanda Forever all year long. In terms of being a blockbuster that is a box office play, is going to get a few tech nominations and a supporting actor nomination. Could Denzel Washington be Angela Bassett?
Angela Bassett went way further than I ever expected. Not that she wasn't great, but just in terms of what you would think while watching that film and what would you think for the trajectory of an Oscar-type performance. And at least to me, for Denzel, I think he's phenomenal. But I mean, I love Denzel. He's maybe my favorite actor of all time. If you know Denzel's charm, if you know his swagger, if you know how he carries himself inside films, he's doing that here. Denzel's playing a heightened version of the public perception of himself just in a villain role, which we haven't seen Denzel do very much recently. And I feel like he would be a pretty good winner, but I feel like the whole notion around it would be like, is this really what we're giving Denzel his third acting prize for? And I think the other part that will add to this narrative is his recent interview where he says he has 3 movies left in it, and one of them is Black Panther 3. To me, the rundown here is, sure, he can win. It would just be a very weird win.
I'm just so stuck for options here. Like, are we really just saying Clarence Maclin is that far out front and no one else can catch him? The Jamie Lee Curtis comparison, I guess, would best compare to Yuriy Borisov, which is a weird thing to say because Jamie Lee Curtis had the whole narrative of a career and everything. But more than anything, I think the reason that she won is because people just loved Everything Ever All at Once that much. In a circumstance where we see Anora be that far out front, could Yuriy Borisov come along with Anora? I would say no. I don't see a world where a performance this quiet, this subtle, although I can see it get a nomination, I can't see them giving a win, much less giving a win right now to a Russian actor.
My big thing for Borisov is, if Anora is that beloved, if it wins Best Picture, if it takes additional prizes, where is Borisov winning in advance? At least Jamie Lee Curtis won a precursor. I don't even know if Borisov would win the Gotham because he's going against Clarence Maclin. He's going against some other people. Like, I just don't even know where we give him a prize to lead to that. But I do agree that he is working his way towards potentially getting into R5 for acting. I want to put him in. I don't know who to put out yet because I haven't seen Norton. I don't want to drop him before seeing him and then potentially just putting him right back in. Maybe I'm stupid to still have Jeremy Strong in my top 5. It's just the supporting actor category feels a lot like supporting actors last year, where we have that clear number one, and then everyone else.
I know already people are going to be upset because we've been saying, oh, who else could win? And meanwhile, we both have Kieran Culkin at number 6. And I know it's going to seem like we're rage baiting with this. It's going to seem like we're trying to get people mad to comment. But really, we just don't believe in A Real Pain. I've seen the movie now. Kieran Culkin doesn't feel like a nominee to me. I just keep coming back to this feels like manufactured buzz around like Succession, people just saying he won the Emmy for Succession, let's give him this. He's really good in the movie, but he's also really hard to watch. It's a performance that relies on cringing, that is oftentimes painful to watch. I think that Kieran Culkin is going to get almost all of the precursors, and I think he's going to be the big surprise miss on Oscar morning, the same way that Charles Melton was last year. I know people don't fully agree with my comparison of May December and A Real Pain. I just see it so much in that they're both films that premiered early in the year. Their buzz kind of died down after the festivals. They got resurrected in the fall at the New York Film Festival, and people started to see them as, could this be that studio's number one push? Netflix last year for May December, their real push was Maestro all along, and people just didn't want to admit that it was Maestro. Likewise, with Searchlight this year, it is a complete unknown all along. That's what they're going to go for. That's what the voters are going to like. And I don't think A Real Pain is actually the bigger contender. Once we get into those televised awards, we're going to see a complete unknown picks up nominations where A Real Pain fails to. I think Kieran Culkin is going to be seen as the big disappointing snub of the year outside of Demi Moore.
I haven't seen the film. I'll see it next week so I can add a little bit more when we do our screenplay and our director video. The people who have seen it, even from the jump this year, like, this isn't an Oscar thing. When we got to New York, all this random buzz came not from the people watching the film. It came from the people predicting the Oscars. And then we go into this whole conversation of a complete unknown coming out, Searchlight giving every indication, this is our dog. We believe in this. We're putting the film out a month early for people to see, and we're having the embargo 3 weeks early. You don't do that for a film that you have no faith in. So the fact that they're doing that shows to me that they have so much faith in it, and we had this whole conversation once already this year. Why isn't Searchlight making A Real Pain more visible? It's not at any of these festivals. And then they bum rushed one major festival and then a few regional festivals, and then now suddenly everyone wants to have it in their top 10, if not like at number 7. It just seems more hope-to-team like May December, which I would admit I fell into last year. I had May December in for picture, screenplay, lead actress, and supporting actor, all the way up until we got to industry awards, and look how that turned out.
It's very easy to want to deny something like A Complete Unknown or something like Maestro and look to something that you are personally more excited for. But at the end of the day, Oscar voters, they like Maestro, they like A Complete Unknown as much as people out here might not want them to. A Real Pain, at the end of the day, it's too small. That said, people could still get mad at me for having Jeremy Strong above Kieran Culkin, saying, your logic is off. You just said that they're not going to nominate a Succession actor. Why do you have Jeremy Strong? Because Jeremy Strong is playing a real person, an imitation that is fitting into that more classic biopic angle. Someone like Bryan Cranston could only break the Emmy to Oscar curse because he was playing Dalton Trumbo, a real person in a biopic. I think the most apt comparison for The Apprentice is Nyad. Despite the fact that it's getting mixed reception, it is an acting showcase first and foremost, and people will reward it as such. I know people are going to disagree with that, and that's fine, but it's Nyad right now for me.
The biggest thing for The Apprentice for both of us, we believe that it's doing this. The only thing that's going to change your mind, and on the flip side for A Real Pain 2, is when we get to TV awards. If A Real Pain shows, hey, it's getting picture like PGA in places that we aren't expected to show up, we'll believe it more. But until that happens, we aren't really going to change with that. And the same thing for Apprentice. As long as Strong and Stan show up where it's supposed to show up, we will continue to have it. And until they start to miss, there's no real budging we can do. And I think more interesting, instead of talking about them, we can talk about who are the random contenders. Because everyone knows Guy Pearce or Stanley Tucci, but like looking further down, I think supporting actor boasts so many wild card contenders that can kind of come out of nowhere. As we always typically see in the supporting category, someone who only gets like one precursor and shows up at Oscar morning. And like Brian Tyree Henry, he's done it before. Fire Inside, pretty mid movie. Really great performance.
And he got the Gotham.
He's clearly a very well-liked actor who, I mean, not to the same level as Ray Fiennes, but has dipped his toes into so many different elements inside of Hollywood. He's worked with so many people already in his very short career. I'm not saying that he's to the level of that already, but clearly it's shown. Causeway, a film that no one cared about. It came out on Apple TV Plus, zero buzz. He got the Oscar nomination over much bigger, much more acclaimed actors inside their films. And someone who I currently don't have in my 10 anymore, who I've had all year long, if you are a Dune head out there, you believe Dune could get into SAG, Bardem showed he's been popping up at places that believe in him in years past. Maybe it can happen this time around. And I know we just talked about Yuriy Borisov and Honora, but if Honora's that strong and they really want to do two actors, Mark Edelstein, I know he missed the Gotham, but he's been getting equally, if not more, buzz so far. Just Borisov obviously has the one nomination to Edelstein's zero so far.
There's also the possibility of, if we see a Challengers resurgence, I don't think we will, but if we do, Josh O'Connor could make a run for this category. There's also the September 5 boys. I just saw the film last night, so it's fresh on my memory. On a personal level, the reason why I don't see this being a big supporting actor contender is that everyone's going to come out of that with a different person on their mind. Ben Chaplin was my favorite in the movie, but he really has no chance. I've heard a lot of people say Peter Sarsgaard, but I don't see why Peter Sarsgaard would be the one. John Magaro is the one who's on screen the most, but I don't think he's particularly a standout. September 5th, I think, is just a fake movie overall, so I'm not going to predict it anywhere, but if we are to see September 5th make a real run for Oscars, make a run for that screenplay category, then I would see John Magaro potentially coming into the supporting actor lineup.
It's a fun thing with supporting actor this year is you can look at 15 names and be like, 5 of these are going to get nominated, but none of them can win.
If we're wanting to humor that Clarence Maclin is this sweeper, we've oftentimes seen a lot of correlation between supporting actor and Best Picture. If Sing Sing does have this resurgence, if they really push it in December and people actually go to see it this time, they don't just forget about its existence, it has this groundswell of support around it, maybe Sing Sing could emerge as a potential Best Picture winner, and it could all be on the back of Clarence Maclin.
And that's something that I have been very much in support and good faith of all season long. I'm now kind of in the wait and see category for them to actually do it. But I think if that happens, if they do put it back in theaters, Maclin Adapted Screenplay Picture is your winning prize. And then you have Domingo, you have potentially editing coming along as additional nominations.
Anyways, that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching and sticking with us through what has been another very long conversation. We'll shorten these up again soon. We just have so much to talk about coming into the real award season finally. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. My name's Matt.
My name is Dyl, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.